Hello, my friend. My name is Byron, and I'm from the BJJ Brick Podcast. I want to thank you for checking out the podcast on the YouTube channel here. It's a weekly show dedicated to Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and having fun on the mats. Enjoy the show.
Thank you for listening to the BJJ Brick Podcast. We'll be bringing you Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu and good times. We hope to flatten your Jiu-Jitsu learning curve, help you get the most out of your grappling ability, and meet your goals both on and off the mat.
Welcome back to the BJJ Brick Podcast. This is episode 240. My name is Byron. I'm here with my buddies Gary and Joe, two guys who are trying to tighten some screws, and one's turning them one way, the other going the other way. They don't know what's happening. One of them is not as mechanically inclined. But today we're talking about the type of game you're playing. Is it a tight game or a loose game? Which way are you turning that screw? I don't know. Guys, what's going on?
Well, I think you're talking about the guy who's not mechanically inclined. Would definitely be me, because I know Joe's got skills that I don't have.
Well, I don't know about that, but isn't there something about a girl named Lucy?
I was... She's Lucy, all right.
Yeah. Lefty Lucy, righty tighty.
There you go. That's one easy way to remember that, I suppose.
But you know what always throws me is when I'm climbing around under a car and now things are upside down.
Yeah.
And I've always got to turn my ratchet right side up and do it, and then okay, now it's going the right way, and then I got to turn it back over and take that bolt out. So yeah, getting the drain plug out of my oil pan is challenging sometimes.
I'm with you 100%. If I'm doing something in a normal situation, if I don't think about it, I pretty much 100% of the time turn it the correct way. If I engage my brain, sometimes it'll mess it up, and if I have to use my left hand, which is not my dominant hand, it's usually backwards. Like, oh, I have to turn it that way? Darn it. Yes, that's true. I'm turning it upside down is confusing. Left hand is also kind of giving me some trouble. Otherwise, it's not so bad. But anyway, we also talk about jiu-jitsu in the show.
Well, that is kind of like jiu-jitsu. When you first learn it and you're learning everything right-handed, and you try a semi-complex move for the first time on your weak side. I mean, it's amazing how stupid I can feel sometimes trying something that should be easy, but if I'm doing it in a different context or on the other side, I can get totally lost.
There you go. And that's actually kind of reminds me of our audiobook, 6 BJJ Training Games. And it's a little over an hour long. It's $5.99, and the money that you spend on that will go help the show keep going and getting stronger. But where you are kind of playing out of your element a little bit and experimenting with your game. Just think of it, if you always do a choke on this particular side, or if you pass this particular way all the time, to the left or to the right, or you always go to side control on the same side, and that's really where it feels better. Think of it as, you know what, this time I'm going to do some things backwards. And the great thing is you have all the knowledge that you need to do that stuff well, but your body is a little bit mixed up, and so it's going to be doing things differently. And sure, while you're playing these games, and basically all 6 of them, it will have somewhat of a negative effect on the way you're performing. You won't be performing quite as well. But over the long term, it's going to really open your eyes to some things that you could do on your dominant side, or maybe just some ways you can get things done on your weaker side. And it really helps you learn about your own game and develop it within the confines of your own give. And you don't need to seek extra help to do this. Playing these games will help you discover your own jiu-jitsu, and it becomes more of an art at that point.
Yeah, they'll help you overcome your ego a little bit too, because it can be humbling when you don't have to tell your teammates you're doing this, and you're trying to go left-handed all the time, and your teammates are like, "Man, I'm sweeping this guy left and right." So, yeah,
well, or what else is great about that, Joe? Like, even if I start going to my bad side to work on it, and maybe I didn't tell my teammates, it's going to get me better going to my bad side. But like Joe said, I'm going to get swept left and right. But you're also helping your teammate. A lot of people pass. Most schools, everybody passes one way, and by somebody going that other way, it's definitely going to make that person better. And Byron, you do that to me a lot. You pass the other way versus everybody else, and it's made my game become better, and it's made me actually work on it. And I know I didn't realize you were probably doing one of your games when you first started doing it, but I realized not only did it make you better, it made me better. So as your gym gets better, as your room gets better, everybody's going to get better, and in turn that learning curve is going to be flattened.
Yeah, that's a good example, Gary. I don't know when it was. It's been probably a couple years ago. I started passing the guard to my right, so it would be Gary's left side, and he, for a little while, I was like, man, here we go. I'm rolling good against Gary, because it was like throwing you off, and you've since adjusted, I think, in two ways. One way is you're good about denying my ability to start to pass that way. You force me to pass the correct way. But when I start to pass that way, you react a lot differently now than you once did, and you have real strong ways to stop me from passing that direction. Still, I'm not going to pass your guard to my left, which if I did, that would be cool. If I could do that, I know my guard passing is on point. And I don't, it's not that I don't try, but it was like a loophole I found in your game that you've since patched up. And now I'm struggling to pass your guard like crazy. But I
don't know if I've patched it up, but it's gotten better, thanks to you.
But that's experimenting with your own jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. Like I know you have always told Joe and I that, I remember you told me back when you were in college, you experimented all the time and it was really important. So, I've taken that to heart.
Yeah, in the science classes.
And I like that Byron's a nice guy. He recognizes that when he looks at Gary's BJJ game, Gary's got holes, and Byron's going to help fill them.
Yep, that's what good friends do, I suppose.
And the key word was good, friends.
Oh, man. Well, I think we're going to rely on one of our friends, Joe, to provide us with the off-the-mat lesson. Joe, what do you have?
Well, unfortunately, I got pulled over recently for speeding. And when the police officer pulled me over and he said, "Do you know why I pulled you over?" I honestly had no idea. And when he told me what he clocked me at and what the posted speed limit was at, my first thought was, the road's pretty busy, and I was not passing a single person, and but yet I was exceeding the speed limit. And basically, I was using only one point of reference. It was the wrong point of reference to monitor my speed, and it got me in a bind. That also got me to thinking about coastal navigation. You guys know I'm a mariner by trade, and when I started going to sea 30 some odd years ago, I was a commercial fisherman fishing off the Oregon and Washington coast. And we did not have GPS back in those days. I mean, it was just coming around, but it was too expensive. And so we relied on more primitive measures to keep us on track. And if you were going to try and sail from the Puget Sound, which is the entrance to Seattle, down to the Columbia River, which is take you up to Astoria and on to Portland, the easiest way to do it would be just to leave the Puget Sound and drive out to about 10 miles to the west, and then drive south until you hit the Columbia River, and then enter the Columbia River. But you got to make sure that you're outside of the breakwaters. You got to make sure you're offshore far enough that you're not going to hit any of the rocks, and it's a pretty hazardous coastline. So you could draw a line on your chart, or as you might call it, a map, and see what heading you needed to hold. And you could try and hold that heading all the way down, and you'd be safe. But the problem is you're going to have winds and currents that are trying to push you off course. So you can be steering the boat 180 degrees, but actually traveling 176 degrees. And that would eventually put you in dangerous waters. So what you would do is you would look along this line, and you would say, if we stay on this line, we'll always be in at least 20 meters of water. And so you watch your depth sounder as you go. And if the water starts to shallow up, you know you're getting pushed in towards the coast, and you turn offshore a little bit. You could also say we're going to be 9 miles off the coast for the majority of the trip. So you set your radar at 12 miles and you monitor the coastline. And if it starts to dip to 8 miles, 7 miles, then you know you're getting too close to the shore, and you turn offshore a little bit. You can also, to make sure that you're making the right speed, because you want to get to the Columbia River at the right time. You can't cross that bar on an outgoing tide. It's the most hazardous bar crossing in the world. You want to make sure you're making the right speed. So you could say at 1800, we're going to pass this lighthouse. And at 2400, we're going to pass this harbor, and you'll be able to see it. And so you monitor these things as you go, and you'll get where you need to be, and you'll get there at the right time. We're all familiar with the phenomenon in Jiu-Jitsu where you train and you train and you train, and you sometimes think you're getting no better because your opponents are also getting better. And I think it's important for us to be able to monitor our progress. And the key is to use multiple points of reference. So I can't just use how well I'm doing against my training partners as the only point of reference, because I'll just be discouraged the whole time. I can't use only going to tournaments, because I might go to a tournament and just get lucky and wipe everybody out and then think I'm doing way better, and it was just actually good matchups. But if I use my performance against my training partners, if I ask my coach and my training partners for feedback, if I go to a tournament now and then, if I visit other schools, if I go to open mats, the more reference systems I'm using, the more I will get an accurate picture of how I'm doing, and that will only help my jiu-jitsu.
Joe, that's an awesome analogy there. I never really thought of it that way. I don't know that much about sailing or driving a boat or whatever you call it there. But,
Driving.
but multiple points of reference, it's something I never thought of. A lot of times, like you said, I hear this all the time. I don't feel like I'm getting better. I feel like I'm sinking. No pun intended, Joe. But, I hear that all the time. It's like I'm not getting better, but, they're only comparing it to one thing. But I really liked what you said. A tournament, you could just get lucky and just really just have that day, or the other person's not there. But, multiple points of reference, going to open mats and stuff like that, you're gonna have different points of reference and see how you're doing. Different people come in and you train with them, and you're gonna see it. But yeah, that's great, Joe. I really like that.
Awesome.
Yeah, that's an important thing. As I look at my wife as she's training and getting better at jiu-jitsu, she can't perceive that at all. She thinks she is right where she started. As she's, I tell her, you can at least agree that you're making better decisions on the mat. Like, you're not making big mistakes constantly. She's, yeah, I guess you're right. But okay, she's now a 2-stripe white belt, and when she got the second stripe, she goes, well, maybe I am getting a little bit better. Well, yeah, you're getting better as you're on the mat. But just like to hear people, and Gary will tell her when he rolls with her, you're like, yeah, you're doing better than the last time, or he's very complimentary towards her. But she doesn't see that in herself, and so that's like, I guess, having somebody tell you that you're doing better is another gauge you could use to, okay, maybe I am getting better because they say that.
And that's one thing we need to do as senior students, instructors, and let people know when they're getting better. Our goal is to grow jiu-jitsu, and if we're not giving feedback and letting people know they're doing better, and really encouraging people, it's just that encouragement is gonna keep some people going. And talking about your wife, and I don't get to roll with her a lot, maybe once a month or so, but man, I see huge improvements every time I roll with her, and it's really neat. And it's just neat to see the improvements of people, especially somebody you don't roll with every single day. You're going to see it, in that month or two of time. You're going to see big changes in their game.
I think that's the problem. If you roll with somebody every day, you almost have the same problem that they have, and they don't see their own improvements, because every time I roll, I'm there rolling, and I can't see my own improvements because they're so incremental. But I just know my game. But if I get to roll with somebody once a month, and they notice that I've improved over that month, that's a bigger change in that month than if they rolled with me 30 times in that month. And it's hard to tell, where did that change? Was there a change? It was so gradual in a month. That's actually pretty fast, but there's not that step up. It's more of a ramp that you're seeing with yourself.
Yeah, Byron, you said something I think is really important. You talked about your wife and that she's not making the big mistakes anymore. When you are using your performance with your training partners, or even like open mats and stuff, it's important to look at the right things. And looking at wins and losses, so to speak, isn't necessarily the best indicator of how you're doing. But like you said, am I making good decisions? Am I if my opponent's Kimuring me, is it because they're getting better at it? Is my elbow still flaring out? Because if it is, that's a problem. But if I'm disciplined and they're still getting it, that means they're getting better, not that I'm stagnating.
Well said, Joe. That's like music to my ears. Hey, speaking of music, why don't we get on with the quote of the week?
Sounds good, Gary. Let's hear it.
Hey, this week we got a quote from AJ Winters. And normally when I see some initials for the first name, I figure Joe and Byron have set me up. But I do not. AJ Winters.
Nope, nothing, Gary.
I don't think you guys set it up. But I guess AJ Winters is from the Motivation Switch. But what he says is, or she, I guess AJ could be a she, he or she said, music is one of the easiest ways to motivate yourself. Listen to uploading tracks and songs about success, and you can't help but want to work harder. It is a great tool to add to your tool bag. What sticks out to you guys, on that quote right there? I mean, is there just like a target, a big target right there?
Oh, Gary. Well, you can't ever have too many tools for your tool bag, Gary.
So this is a good quote, Gary. The last half of that last line has been added to the quote. We were talking before the show and trying to get make sure you try to set you up to read it.
I took it. You guys didn't even have to set me up to it.
So the actual quote by AJ Winters, which is, I guess, a real name. Music is one of the easiest ways to motivate yourself. Listen to uplifting tracks and songs about success, and you can't help but want to work harder. That's where the quote stops. It's a great tool to add to your tool bag. Is an ongoing joke that we have with Gary. If you're new to the show, Gary once said the word, another tool for the tool bag. Instead of the common phrase, another tool for the toolbox. And now he's since informed us that there are tool bags, and he, stands proudly in that tool bag.
Yep, and I appreciate the public apology by Joe. That was really nice.
That was real classy of him.
Yeah, just trying to do you a solid, Gary. Hey, this is not necessarily, it is related to the quote, but how do you guys feel about music while you're rolling? You guys listen to it in class or no?
I don't, but to be honest, I really like music while I'm rolling. Certain types of music. I don't know if I'd want to hear "I'm Too Sexy" by Ray Said Fred or songs like that. But yeah, I really like music when I'm rolling. I think it keeps me a little more relaxed. Lets me have a little bit more fun. And I've talked about, I really think of my jiu-jitsu as an art, and music kind of comes into that too. And I think sometimes just makes me flow a little bit better.
Yeah, for the listeners, one of the gyms I train at, we listen to music, and it's pretty much classic hard rock type music. But one time I went in with just a couple of guys on an off night, and I said, "Hey, let's listen to some classical music." We put on like some Beethoven or Bach or something. It really changes the way you roll.
Huh? Did you roll better? When you said Bach, were you talking about Sebastian Bach?
No, like Bach's Fifth Symphony, or is it Beethoven's Fifth Symphony? Okay. No, I wouldn't say I rolled better, but I rolled different. I mean, it puts you in a little more of a cerebral mindset, I think. I mean, when you're listening to Metallica and Megadeth, you're kind of amped up, and that is the main driver behind your rolling, I think. And you listen to something a little more classical, it changes things, and I enjoyed it. I mean to do it again sometime.
Yeah, that's interesting. I think that I know. Okay, when I'm rolling with Gary in his group, there's no music, and I don't miss it. But when I'm at Fox Fitness training, they basically have music on all the time while we're rolling, and a lot of times it's on while we're training or doing technique. And the only negative is sometimes it's kind of loud. So if whoever's instructing isn't loud enough to present over that, it can be kind of hard to hear. But I generally appreciate the music that's being played, and it's usually a pretty good variety. Everything from hip hop to harder rock to classic rock, and just kind of a variety thing. Not really much country in this group, but other than that, yeah, it's just, I think it's, I don't know if I listen to it really that well while I'm actually rolling. I think I hear it, but I don't really pay attention to it unless there's something funny. And it does provide the occasional like slam dunk joke that just comes like, this song is being played now while you're showing this technique, so, or while this is happening. And so that's kind of an easy, just a way to interject a little bit of personality into the class is if it's kind of dry, have music on the background. But I like it. It doesn't, I don't know if that's motivating or not. Sometimes you'll hear music come on, like, the soundtrack for Rocky comes on or something like that. And it's like, all right, you can't, I'm not going to go easy this time. And you might roll a little bit harder. But for me, the music has helped me off the mat training. If I'm feeling lazy about running, sometimes I get, in times where I'll run pretty consistently for quite a while, and then it'll kind of fade, and then I won't run, But if I'm like seeing it fade and I don't want to give that up, I need to download some new songs to my phone, and that way I have something to let's listen to. I got a couple new songs I want to hear, and I like to hear them, and I run better with music versus like a podcast or an audiobook. I just run faster. There's nothing I could change about that.
I saw online recently that there's some services that'll provide playlists for runners, and all of the songs will be similar in their tempo.
Yeah.
And so you can pick what suits you, and then it keeps you on track, because I've done some running before and listened to a random playlist, and you kind of get a ballad on, and then you get some Metallica, and it's like you're doing wind sprints or something, so.
Yeah, I think it's a good kind of a hack to your workouts if it helps you. I'm not telling you not to listen to the BJJ Brick podcast while you work out, but if it makes you work out a little bit harder, maybe that'd be a good time to listen to music. I do know for a fact we have people that listen to the podcast while they're in the gym working out, lifting weights and that sort of thing. That's great. But if you do one more set because you got music on, maybe the drive is a better time to listen to the podcast, or while you're cooking food or something. I don't know. I listen to podcasts at any point in time. I'm not talking to somebody else. I might as well have a podcast going. Then it's an opportunity to have one. I don't always listen, but I could be doing anything. If I'm by myself, the podcast is pretty easy to get something going, because I don't watch TV or anything like that. But sometimes music actually helps me perform something better. And that's typically off the mat training.
Yeah. I like what you were talking about, Joe, about tempo. And one thing that's really helped me is Byron has really helped me a lot about this, the tempo. What I do is Byron, I don't know if you guys know, but he's a professional beatboxer. So what he does is he beatboxes at a tempo for me and records all that for me, and it's really helped. But hey, Byron, would you mind doing one of your beatboxes right now?
We'll see how it comes across on the mic. Typically, I beatbox unplugged, but it probably won't come across real great. But I'll just do a little something right here.
Okay.
Good job, Byron.
Man, that's awesome, Byron. I like it.
I don't know who that was.
It always gets me going. It always gets me going.
Who was that?
That was you.
Gary, that was good, huh?
Yeah, that was real good.
Good job, Gary.
Yep.
I think it was Joe. I was going to spice in some legitimate...
That was awesome, Joe.
Okay, now, since we're on this tangent, Joe, you could provide the beat. Gary, you provide the rhyme. You got to rhyme 2 lines together. So let's see what you guys
I don't know. That might be a little bit advanced for us. You ready, Gary?
I'm ready. My name is G, and I like to rap. I got a microphone and a baseball cap. I live right down by the mill. I don't know what comes next.
Oh, man, we gave it the old college try.
There you go.
Yep, we're pretty good.
There you go. You get thousands of people hearing you guys try to rap. I'm impressed by Joe's beatboxing.
Just lost half our listeners. But...
So, Joe, you're only saying we have one now?
Yeah.
Well, thanks for that one person who's still listening.
Sticking around.
Yeah.
But, that's one of the stranger tangents we've got onto over the years. But good stuff here. I'm impressed by Joe's ability. Gary, your rhyming ability, that was pretty good. But Joe, I actually am pretty impressed by your ability to throw down a beatbox.
So it sounds like Joe won.
Joe,
good job, Joe.
Yeah,
I'm a gracious loser.
there you go.
Oh man, we're in it together, Gary. We win together, we lose together. So
I like that.
It's
I
all
like
good.
that.
Well, perfect
you're
practice
nice
makes
to me. I
perfect
like
for
Byron.
Gary.
Perfect practice makes perfect, Byron.
Yeah.
So one of the keys to being able to lay down a good beatbox is to be loose. You can't be too tight. So let's talk about loose and tight, guys. What do you think?
Yeah, we're back to old Lucy.
All right. This idea of a show topic, I was talking with somebody who competes regularly, I would say 10 times a year. And we're looking at the calendar, and he's like, I don't think I'm going to compete at all this year. So busy with running a gym, and got a lot of projects going on, and just a whole bunch of stuff, other travels, but not competition travels. And he was like, this is not going to be a great year for my jiu-jitsu. And I was like, this could be a great year if you look at how you could expand your game and not necessarily work your best game like you're getting ready for a competition. Like he's fought in, fight to win, that sort of thing. And we talked about it. And so that's the game plan. He's going to be more experimental with his jiu-jitsu. So that to me is a more loose game. When you're just trying things, you're not necessarily, working on your best thing. You're not necessarily trying to finish and to be ahead on points all the time, but you're really experimenting with either systems or techniques in your jiu-jitsu versus the tight game when you're doing your best moves against somebody and you're really working on getting those to be even better.
Yeah, since you introduced this idea last week, I've actually been my definition of a tight and loose game has been evolving a little bit. I think I thought about it mostly as in a tight game is, pressure and no space and that kind of thing. And a loose game is you might play spider guard or knee on belly or something where there's more space and movement. But
okay,
I think that's just really a small part of it. I do think it's part of it, but I think, like you said, experimenting. I also think maybe it can be partly defined by whether or not you're trying to dictate the direction of the match or whether you're just flowing and responding to what your opponent does. For example, I could be in side control and you could have a good frame in and your elbow's on my hip, and I can switch my hand so that I go to blocking your hip and put my elbow on the other side of your head and just force north-south, and then you can be disciplined and have your elbows in, and I can just sort of force a Kimura grip, and I can go for a Kimura. And another guy can be in side control, and I put my arm underneath to try and escape that way. And when I put my arm underneath, then he goes to north-south. And then I try and maybe push his head to one side or the other. And when I do it, my elbow flares out a little bit, and he gets the Kimura. So to someone who doesn't train jiu-jitsu, it looks like both athletes did the same thing, but it was really a total difference in the way they got there. Does that make sense? Yeah.
That makes sense to me. And I like, we definitely have two different ways to look at that as far as the original thoughts of a tight game versus a loose game, the style you're playing. I was thinking more about like the mode in your training development, but definitely that's maybe more people are thinking about that than what I was thinking coming to this. But I think they're both great topics, and it's like kind of like four different things we talk about. Two on the tight mode and two on the looser style of gameplay. I remember talking to a guy right before a match, and he plays a very competitive tight game, a lot of pressure, no space, smashing, and we're watching. I think he was set to get up. He was in the finals. It was submission only, and he was watching his competitor, two guys compete, and they were going, and he was watching, and I think that's a smart thing to do, especially for him. But he was like, "And this guy's pretty good," and I said he plays a really loose game, and the guy submitted all of his opponents, but like, man, there's a lot of space in all these matches. Don't give him that space, and I think your tight game will overcome his loose game. And that's exactly what happened. This guy couldn't get his loose game going. There was no space at all. He got smashed, and I tend, competitive-wise, to favor the more tight games. If you're far better than the person you're competing against, you could play that looser game. But if you're able to have a tight game, I think it gives you that control right off the bat.
Yeah, that's awesome. Gary, last week you said you play a loose game. I'm curious, what is it about your game that would make you define it as a loose game?
Not being a competitor and being a person who I roll just to have fun. And for me, the idea of fun is kind of like what you were talking about a little bit earlier, Joe, is kind of flowing. And I don't really like it when we're training and there's no movement. I like to always be moving. I like to always go for a submission. My idea, I just try to submission after submission after submission. I want to throw submissions out. I may allow you to pass my guard, because I think it's giving me a better chance at, exploiting that elbow or anything of that sort. So that's how I like to play, but I am with Byron. I do agree that tight game is so important. And as I've went on and watched, people that I've trained with progress, I've noticed that their games have gotten tighter as they've got, more, went up the belt ranks. And I realized that was one thing that was hurting me. I was chasing submissions so much and playing so loose. So, I have really been working on my, being tighter. And, I might be, get a really tight game for, a minute or 45 seconds, and then I just create that space just to start moving again. So, I'm still getting the flow going. But it's kind of crazy because I'm talking about how I like the looser game better. But I was rolling with a guy yesterday, and we rolled for minimum hour and 45 minutes straight. And this guy is probably 270 pounds. He's doesn't have an ounce of fat on him. He's very big guy. And I'm telling you, I was on top 3 times in an hour and 45 minutes.
I know you're talking about that, Gary.
Yeah. I was on top 3 times. And every time I got up top, I went for a submission right off the bat. That's just me. And sometimes they failed, sometimes they hit. And, the next thing I know, I'd be on the bottom. But I have to say, we got done rolling. And I told that guy, man, it was a pleasure rolling with you. I got beat up so bad, I was on the ground the whole time. But it made me, really work on being in the tight game and really, work on creating any ounce of space I could get, any inch that I could get, and, try to create another inch from there and create a little bit of space. And, it was a different role, but I think it really helped my game out. And I'm excited to train with this guy again. And I hope I'm just going to get better from doing it.
Do you guys, in the big picture, think that part of the definition or part of the difference between a tight and a loose game is maybe if you play a loose game, you got to be pretty good at 30 moves, but if you play a really tight game, maybe you're really good at 10 moves?
I think that's fair to say, Joe. Yeah, I mean, you kind of set your game up, and I guess maybe if you have a loose game, I don't know if you necessarily need to have 30 moves. I still think you can probably get by, with a couple moves. I don't know how I really feel about that, but I guess, that second part, the being loose, I don't think you need that many moves, but I could see where you're coming from, that you're going to get in different positions and you better know what to pull out of your tool bag when you do get in that position.
Yeah, because I'm not a big footlock guy. I've been trying to play with them a little bit just so that Gary doesn't take my foot off when I come up there in June.
No, I won't.
But
I won't even go for feet.
So I'm not a big
nice
footlock guy. Yeah. I'm trying to learn a little bit about the game and develop it a little bit. But I think I favor a tight game. And unless you're a considerable bit better than me and more athletic or something, unless you have some advantages, I don't put myself in a position where the footlock game is going to be played. Does that make sense? So to me, that's part. To me, that's part of a tight game. Is I know what positions I'm strong in, and I try and play a game that keeps me in those positions.
Yeah. I think that goes back to like what Byron and I were talking about earlier about passing the guard on one way versus the other way, and not only did I work on people passing the guard on my weak side, I worked on funneling that person back to my strong side, and it's kind of like what you were saying there, Joe. It's you know what your strong positions are, and your feet stay out of those positions. So yeah, I think that's a solid point.
I rolled with a guy last week, big, strong guy, 20 years plus younger than me, not quite as experienced though. And it was the first time I rolled with him. Everybody else knew him, so we were friendly right off the bat. But man, he came strong and he came hard, and ended up where I was in top half guard, which is a pretty strong position for me. And I just made his life pretty miserable for about 6 minutes. And you know what was really cool about that? It was a week after I got pulled over, and this guy was a cop.
We love them that come and train with us. We like to have anybody that public service. But that's funny.
And I think all law enforcement should train jiu-jitsu.
Yeah. So I'm going to rewind a little bit. Because I do want to address the idea, and it's a good question and interesting idea, a tight game versus loose game. As a loose game, do you have 3 times as many moves as you do if you play a tight game? I think playing a loose game exposes you to more moves, and if you play that all the time, I think you'll have more techniques over the long term than playing a tight game where you're not allowing much space of anything, and you typically go through the same path to completion, if at all possible. So I think just by the nature of the games they play, it doesn't require you to have more moves. It will develop more moves. By definition, they probably won't be as strong, but you might find a couple of them that are your better things. And another thing that you guys talked about is Gary. Yeah.
Let me interrupt real quick too, because that made me start thinking about, you're talking about that you might not get as good as some moves. You're going to be exposed to more moves. But, one thing I think with a looser game too, though, we start putting our brains into it. And being a looser game, I think one time, I think I try to do this a lot, is I try to funnel them down the path. I may create some space, but I'm funneling to my Kimura. I'm funneling them to that one move. And I think, maybe I didn't think about it enough when I was talking to Joe the first time. And Joe kind of caught me off guard with such a great question, because I'm only used to great questions from Byron. So, but no, I'm kidding. But yeah, so I think what I do sometimes is, even when I'm playing a loose game, I may be loose, but I'm being static on one area because I'm trying to force that guy's arm to move some way, or I'm trying to force his head to move some way, but I'm leaving the rest of, I may be tight on one spot, but I'm leaving everything else open, which I consider loose, to funnel him down where I want him to go, where I'm going to capture an elbow or I'm going to capture a neck.
Yeah, man. I see as, so it's a little bit maybe difficult because most people that are listening haven't actually rolled with Gary, but he's like, he won't give you an open door to walk through where it's easy to get into the house, but he'll give you an open window, and you got to climb in it. But it's clearly the best way to get, past his guard or to do something to Gary. But that's that is also, like we talked about a loophole. Gary will show you, here's the loophole, but really you just put your head into a noose and it's going to get tight. So he's funneling it in a different way. And that's a whole different strategy, I think. I think it's a fairly advanced thing to where you're giving somebody a little bit of room. Like, look at this. Do you want to try this? And that's a mistake for them to try. But, people like me just, oh yeah, I want that. That's the correct thing to do at this point in time. And I fall for those a lot. I fall a lot for those, like an idiot, like sweeps where you almost give up passing and you sweep the guy. Like, I fall for those more than I should, because I just want to pass. And that's kind of the style of loose, but also funneling. You let them kind of funnel themselves with making those mistakes, because you left the open window, but it's not a slam dunk as far as getting you what you want done. Actually, it's what you wanted me to try, and you've got an answer for it. That's interesting. I never thought about that, Gary.
Yeah. Yeah, but it can backfire as it did to me yesterday in an hour and 45 minutes where I was on top for probably 4 minutes. So it can backfire tremendously.
Well, the backfiring there is the fact that on Saturday mornings we don't run a timer and you end up locked in with somebody for a long time sometimes. That's one thing I would change about a Saturday morning roll, because I want to roll with like a lot of people. And typically we end up rolling 20 or 30 minutes with one person and switch. When you get a drink of water is when we switch. And if you switch and nobody else is switching, it's kind of hard to get paired up with somebody. Anyway, that's a different story, I guess. But I can see how you get locked in with somebody like that because nobody else is grabbing them either. But Gary also mentioned your loose game. I think it takes more skill to play that type of game, looking at the way you do. And a lot of that skill is from your escapes. They've got to be on point. You're not, even playing a loose game, even in your guard pass, you're not spending a lot of time in miserable positions. Like, you get out quickly. And that's something that takes a lot of skill, and it's important to do.
It's funny you say that, because I think it takes more skill to play that tight game. I just think the grips and, the pressure and just the subtle changes of your hips. And I don't think a lot of people who just watch jiu-jitsu realize that the technique to really just smother somebody and really just hold somebody down and make it painful. They just think it's a big, strong guy holding them down. They don't see all the little hip changes, up on the toes, the hand placements like Joe was talking about earlier. Like I know Byron always says, I put my hand up on your hip, you dip, they dip. but yeah, I just, I really respect the technique, and it's not brute force, which people think, but the technique of those really technical, smothering top pressure guys. That's what impresses me, and that's what I hate to be against. I just hate when I got that person, and that's how I was yesterday when that guy he'd pass my guard, and I would just be like, well, here it goes again. It's like I'm in trouble.
So we've determined that Gary plays a loose game, and I tend to play a tight game. I like very little space and allow my opponent very little room to move and stick to my strong positions. Byron, what type of game do you usually play?
I'll ask Gary to confirm, but I would say
Byron. I ain't even going to let you talk because
no,
Byron,
he's going to say I'll play a tight game.
Makes you feel like you got a darn bus on top of you. I'm telling you.
I think I play a loose bottom game and a tight top game.
Man, your top game is brutal.
Is my bottom game very tight? Like, as far as maybe as a generality, bottom games are more loose, but I don't think my bottom game is all that tight.
I think your bottom game is looser because you're definitely more offensive minded on the bottom. I mean, I know you don't want to be on the bottom, but you're always you're throwing stuff up. When you get top position, man, you're just like an anaconda. It's like, please just submit me. Well, no, you just got to get tighter and tighter and tighter, and a minute later, maybe you'll start trying to take my arm off. But it's like, come on, Byron, please take it off. Do it now. Don't wait a minute.
And that's how I feel. Yeah, and that's a difference between our games. Is Gary will pass my guard, and he'll have attacked within, like, the pass itself, and his attacks are very good from that. I'll pass, and it takes me a long time to set up an attack, and it's just totally different. And if I give him space or give anybody space, they start to get out. So I've got to take the space away. It definitely affects the type of attacks I could do. But I think I want to play a tight top game. I want to give some pressure while I'm passing, and I don't experiment as much as I probably should. I think if I attacked a little faster on top, I would get more attempts anyway at submissions. But I definitely I spend a lot of time on the bottom when I play guard, shrimping, and that just tells me that I'm playing a little bit of a looser game because I'm avoiding guard passing instead of attacking all the time, as far as or like playing close guard and controlling posture for 2 minutes straight, and then locking up that arm bar. That's a tight bottom game. I play butterfly guard, probably 75% of the time, and constantly I'm just kind of pushing them around, trying to take away their base, and look for guillotines and other ways to attack. But I think it's a fairly loose guard game and fairly tight top game, I think. I should switch that. I should try to play a loose top game and a tighter bottom game and see how that goes. That's probably, if I did that for a couple months, I probably would gain quite a bit.
Yeah, I mean it's actually in your audiobook, 6 games for BJJ. Byron.
Well, it could be in his next audiobook, Topsy Turvy World, where we turn things upside down.
Yeah, there you go.
I'm literally writing that down because just
that's
stay tuned.
That's going to be the audiobook.
Oh.
Joe, I think sometimes Byron hates hanging out with us.
Oh, I don't know.
This is the best part of the day here, guys. So we described our own games a little bit. Let's help out and say, recommend whether you should play a loose game or whether you should play a tight game. When would be a good situation to play a loose game?
I think if you're just, experimenting, trying to learn new stuff, kind of flow, trying to, figure out how to move. That's one thing I think, has helped me with my, on a loose game, just really getting my body to move, learning how to flow, kind of like surfing positions.
When I read these notes, Byron, I wasn't thinking necessarily when you typed out who should play loose, who should play tight. And I was thinking about the individual, not so much the circumstance. And, kind of at first I'm thinking about body type. And but then I got to thinking about personality type. And I've heard people say that you can make an analogy. Actually, the first analogy I heard was between your dating style or the way you try and meet people. But we're all old and those days are behind us. But I think you could also look at like your driving style, and if you're an aggressive driver and you're, in and out of traffic and really defensive, or if you just kind of cruise along and take things as they come. But I think it has a lot to do with personality as much as body type.
Man, I think, Joe, you just hit it right on, nail right on the head. It's, I really do think that's really relevant here is your personality.
Yeah, I hadn't considered that, but that's a good point.
Yeah, because I don't know if you should necessarily really even play a loose. I don't know if I want to tell somebody to play a loose or a tight game. I personally think the tight game is probably the way to go if you, to get best at jiu-jitsu. And it's funny because I play the other way, but I just see the people who really shut me down and make me wish that I didn't roll with them is those tight game people. And you watch all the high level guys. It's they get your back. There's no space whatsoever. It's tight as can be.
That's funny, Gary. I think it's one of those grass is greener on the other side of the fence thing because I play a tight game, and when somebody else is playing tight and pressure, I feel like I've got some answers, and we can go back and forth. But man, when I get against those guys that are really agile and limber, and they play that loose game, I feel like when I turn here to defend, they're over there, and then when I turn there, they're behind me, and I feel like I'm chasing them the whole time. So
that's crazy.
I don't know. Yeah, it's the grass is green, I think.
Yeah, hearing it from the other side. Yeah.
I agree. I think you should alternate from time to time, provided if you're brand new, you really don't have a choice what you're doing. You're trying to work jiu-jitsu, but provided you've got some experience, you could say, I want to run this person through this path and get to this point. You're going to play a fairly tight game. Or I guess if like Gary, you're trying to trick them in to get to that path. But if you're playing a more loose game, I think the opportunities to learn a bigger variety of techniques is good for you. I do think the opportunities to have somebody else attack you with different things is also there. Because if the match is equal time, you're in a good position, equal time you're in a bad position. If you're playing a loose game, you're going to get attacked more. You're not as conservative with your movements versus the tight game. But getting attacked more while you train is a good thing. It's not bad. It's you busting through 4 submissions in a row opposed to just 2, and or trying to get out of those, and that's good training. You don't want the only time that you're in a triangle is to be once a month, because that's not a lot of time learning how to escape a triangle. But if you're working and you have to get through a few places where you're in trouble, that's great training. So I think the potential learning curve would be if you're trying to learn Jiu-Jitsu, as far as get like a base of 50 techniques that are pretty good. I think playing loose style will help you find those 50 techniques, versus if you want to learn a tight game, and well, of course the tight style will help you. If you wanted to learn an A game where there are definite areas of weakness in your game, but if you can control a match or a sparring session and keep it in the confines of this situation, you'll do very well. Or if you're a white belt wanting to tap out a blue belt, you've got to play a game where you're controlling some parts of it, and a loose game, I think you're giving some of that up. I do think accelerated learning with the loose style, better performance. Typically with that tight style, it's probably smart to oscillate or alternate, or I don't know any other Nate words, back and forth periodically.
Yeah, well, you should definitely rejuvenate.
There you go.
I would agree. I would add something, Byron. I think maybe what is best for learning is whatever isn't coming natural for you. I think before a student actually thinks about this, they sort of fall into one or the other naturally. So I fall into playing a tight game naturally. And when I feel the need to expand my game, that's one of the things I do, is like I go to class with a goal to be in different positions than I'm used to try different things. You've got one of your games in your 6 games for BJJ is to, just rapid fire, try as many submissions as you can. And that's the kind of thing that I would associate with a loose game, but it's the kind of thing I need to do from time to time to keep myself moving forward, so I don't just get really good at 2 moves.
Yeah, I like that, Joe. You want to aggravate your opponent and agitate. So good one.
Yeah, I like those words.
Oh, really working the words. I would say if you're looking to compete, you should be trying to tighten your game. You're being less experimental with your moves. You're playing more of your A game.
Yeah, I'm not sure what Gary's going to say, but I'm thinking this is the one point where we're all going to be in agreement.
Yeah.
If you want to win a tournament, you want to know what your best positions are, your best pass, your best sweep, your best submission, and you want to try and funnel the match in that direction.
Well said, Joe. Yep, definitely. Get it where you're strongest, and be tight, and go for the finish.
But okay, Gary, nice of you to agree. But looking back a little bit, you can funnel the match by leaving, like Gary's style. I can't do it. I don't know if Joe's capable, but like leaving what appears to be a mistake open for somebody and letting them take that. You have helped them make that mistake. And Gary can be like, you could think, yes, I'm attacking Gary now. Yes, I am in a great position. And Gary could be thinking the same thing because, yes, I gave him that spot. And yes, he took the bait. And so you do have the ability to play that funnel style of game as a loose style. I think that takes a lot of strategy, and you've got to have like answers to a lot of different problems. As Gary's working his Kimura as an almost passed, I'm trying to Kimura him. I'm trying to armbar that arm. I might be trying to wrap up his chin. He's got answers for all of these. And if you don't, because those are natural reactions for somebody that's trying to pass your guard and almost passed as you're sinking in your Kimura, you're going to get hit with a lot of things that could happen to you as you're opening like a window versus a door. And Gary has that ability to funnel with a loose game. I think that's fairly advanced to do, but it's also an option.
Yeah, I really agree with you, Byron. But I think even within the loose game, you tighten it up a little bit.
Yes.
When Gary's just rolling in class, he may open windows that give people 5 different options. But if he's competing, he's going to try and only open the window enough to give somebody 1 or 2 options. I would think that is true.
Yeah. Yep. I agree with you. Conjugate.
Oh, boy, Gary's got the smarticle particles going full force
there. So we've kind of covered this, and it's been an interesting discussion. I've learned some things for sure. Thinking about these differently. I always thought a loose game was you got to be ready for anything, and Gary definitely shed some light on what he doesn't need to be ready for anything. He's setting up some traps for me. So when I'm rolling with Gary, I've got a little bit of a heads up. Maybe I need to do the unexpected a little bit more often.
You know what I liked about this is we all had our own little different styles, and we didn't agree on anything. We didn't all agree on everything. But I kind of like conversations like that. When I had no clue. I'm sitting there thinking, I hate these guys who got the really tight game. That's the way to go. And you guys are saying, boy, I hate those really loose guys, with your tight game. So it's kind of neat to realize that we're all unique individuals. I really, the one part I didn't think about that Joe put into my head, I really do think personality will dictate your game. I think, when we first start, we do learn, we start taking after our teacher and what's being taught to us. But I do think, that jiu-jitsu is an art and our personality is going to take over, and we're going to express it, based off of our personality, the type of person we are. And we're going to, go down that path. It's going to be ornate.
Oh, Gary.
Half those words, I don't even know what they mean. I'm just saying it sounds like I know what I'm talking about.
So let me throw one more at you guys here, and it may kind of fall somewhere in the middle. But which of these styles make either you more tired or takes more work or energy, and which one takes more for the person that's playing against that style?
Oh, I think playing against that tight style is brutal. I think that one's going to basically empty your gas tank quickly.
You know what I think? I've seen guys come into jiu-jitsu class before who have run half marathons and been football players, and they get on the mat and they're just gassed. I mean, it's a totally different type of cardio. And I kind of think that maybe forcing your opponent into whatever style they're not accustomed to.
Good point.
Yeah, so if you like to play a loose style and I play a loose style with you, you're not going to get tired at all. But if you're used to just moving around with very little pressure and very little contact, and I can get you in a bottom position and just play tight pressure, then I think it's going to wear you out. And likewise, I'm a pressure guy, and when I play with another pressure guy, we've just got this slow grinding pace. It suits me well. I'm fine. I don't get gassed. But when somebody's running circles around me and I'm trying to transition from 15 different positions in 5 minutes, I get tired quick. So I think it depends on what you're used to.
Yeah, I like that, Joe. You really illuminated that to us.
Are you gonna start to alliterate next?
Nah, but man, I just really like hanging out with guys like you that are very passionate.
Well, it's nice of us to coordinate this whole thing together and all three be here on the show. I think there's something right with both what you're saying. It may be hard to keep up a pace of somebody who's loose, but if you're a loose style of player, you're probably used to it anyway. So it would be harder to wear that person down. If you play a tight game, maybe you're more comfortable with that, but I think it's hard for anybody to be kind of smashed and controlled for a long time because while, let's say Joe is playing a tight game versus me and he's at side control, I'm working to make this a loose game, or at least a loose, couple of seconds while I get away out of here.
Yeah, I do see what you guys are saying. I think it's the path that the person doesn't feel as comfortable with. Like, Joe gets side control on me. It's almost like he wants to exterminate me. And in that whole time, I mean, I'm just getting smashed. I can't breathe. I start to hallucinate. And, from that point, then I'm just praying that I can roll again and maybe reincarnate.
But you have to, let's say you're getting smashed. You're failing to oxygenate your muscles. You're going to get worn out quicker.
And I'm going to hibernate.
Hibernate. Yeah. You might shut down and hibernate.
Okay, but take this back to the original
Thank
topic.
you, Joe.
I agree that
Joe's going to help officiate.
I agree.
Hey, hold on real quick, guys.
Oh, okay, go ahead.
I gotta go urinate.
He's just working. He's just procrastinating.
I'm back.
There is one word that I'm just waiting for Gary to break out.
The easy one. That's funny.
No, but to take this back to the topic at hand, I do agree that the crushing game can be more exhausting. But because I play a tight game, I think that I might have better framing and those kind of tools than somebody that plays a loose game. So I would still say that I'm going to get tired by a loose player more than a tight player any day.
Well, Joe, I think you would like my loose game because I'm slow and I'm old. So there's going to be no very fast scrambles with me.
Okay.
Okay. It's an interesting concept. I do, I urge you, and I think you guys would back me up. If you're listening to this and you play a really tight game or a really loose game, try to play the other style. Maybe for today I'm going to play a tight game. I always play a loose, wild game. Today I'm going to lock it down and I'm going to shut down games. I'm going to kind of grind things out. Or if you always play that tight style, today I'm just going to go for things. I'm going to play a more fast and loose style and see how you do. And I guarantee you, if you're used to playing a certain style, you won't do as well. But you'll definitely learn other parts of the game. It's like if you always play guard and you decide, today I'm going to play top. You won't do as well for a little while, but you'll definitely learn more about jiu-jitsu. And there's just tremendous growth to be had by venturing outside of your typical game sometimes.
Man, that was awesome. I want to say honestly that out of the topical discussions that we've had so far, this is my favorite.
Yeah, it's funny. We've all got into it. We've all been passionate. We've disagreed. We've learned from each other. And actually, I didn't throw passionate in there on purpose, but it. Yeah, well, I was like, "What's Joe laughing at?" And I was like, "Oh, there's another A word."
Well, unfortunate that we have to move on from this point, but I think we've covered this topic pretty well.
I would agree. I think next on the list is we have an interesting article to discuss, and the title of it is "How Important Is Your Jiu-Jitsu to Your Spouse?" And it can be found on OK Kimono's blog. There'll be a link to it in the show notes. So yeah, I'm reading this, and I guess just to answer the question, how important is your jiu-jitsu to your spouse? I would say that my wife's pretty much on board, and my jiu-jitsu is important to her. And part of the reason why that's true is I include her in my jiu-jitsu. So what do you guys think about the topic, and what do you guys think about the article?
The topic, I think that's a very important, topic in jiu-jitsu, and it doesn't get talked about a lot. First of all, jiu-jitsu is time consuming. You are going to spend time away from your spouse if your spouse doesn't train. Jiu-jitsu can be expensive. I mean, we're talking monthly payments. We're talking gis. We're talking rash cars. We're talking tournaments. We're talking travel to tournaments, injuries, co-pays. So, I mean, jiu-jitsu can be expensive. And if your spouse, significant other, boyfriend, girlfriend, dog, stuffed animal is not on board, it's going to be tough to train. And, we all want to train. And Joe brought up a good point there is he keeps his spouse involved, which is definitely going to make it easier.
And for the spouses who are on the fence, Gary just talked him out of supporting you because it can be expensive. It can be time consuming.
Well, in all reality, you do have to be honest with your spouse. You're going to have to tell them, hey, it's going to cost me, $150 a month. I'm going to have to buy a gi every now and then. You don't want to just, sorry, we're not going on vacation because I'm buying a gi. So you definitely, want to be prepared for, what's going to happen. Just so your wife doesn't get shocked when all of a sudden, you are asking for some money.
Yeah, it's an important thing. I like on the article here, and we'll put a link to it in the show notes, but just a simple thing to kind of, you've tied the knot. and now you've tied your belt. Let's talk about both. And it's overlooked. We always talk about, tight game or loose game or this technique or this, this person. But really, one of the most important people to the success of your jiu-jitsu, even if they don't train, is going to be your spouse or your significant other. If you have that person, if you have a person like that in your life, having a real negative spouse or having somebody that thinks jiu-jitsu is stupid is going to be a tough hurdle, and it could really hurt you long term. And I don't think that the proper answer is to say, bye honey, I'm out of here. But it's going to come from educating your spouse or significant other and getting them on the same page, because it's part of it is learning how to choke somebody and learning how to defend yourself or whatever. But there's so much else that jiu-jitsu is bringing to you. And if you come home and you complain about how jiu-jitsu was and you talk negatively and you're in a bad mood, they're going to see that and they're going to, well, why are we spending $150 a month for you to be gone 10 nights out of that month and have a terrible time? So part of how we communicate about jiu-jitsu, even if you're frustrated, you need to really kind of, I wouldn't say guard your language, but really, if something good is happening on the mat and you're excited about it, or something really positive, you need to share that. And we all have like rough days on the mat, and you come home and you got a giant bruise on your neck or your face, and you need to explain, that's part of training. Sorry, we have, maybe you just got engaged and the wedding's right behind the corner. You probably shouldn't try to get a big bruise in your face at that point in time. But just let them know that isn't a huge negative to you. Yes, it would. If this was your face, you would think it would hurt worse than it does. But I don't even know who did this to me. That's what happens to me. I get big old bruises. I don't know who did it. So I can't tell you when it happened. I know it happened tonight. But it didn't bother me at the time, and it doesn't hurt now. And so I think it's important to just really tell him how important it is. Maybe you've lost weight training. Maybe I would think you're in a better mood when you do come home. Maybe you're excited about it in the morning before you guys go to work or school, wherever you're doing. And just if they see that positive change in your life, they should hopefully be on board with you. And if they're not, there's probably other issues there.
That's awesome. I was going to ask you guys what your strategies were to get your spouse on board, and Byron answered it. Gary, I'll throw mine out and then listen to yours. One of the things I do is I try really hard to pick and choose classes that don't conflict with other things. We have noon classes at my home gym, and those work out really well for my wife. Her and the grandkid are either busy doing something or having a quiet time at that time in the afternoon, and so there's not as many people at that class. It's not as intense of a class. Maybe it always wouldn't be my first choice, but I can go to that class and my wife doesn't feel like she's missing anything. Whereas if I try and go to 2 or 3 evening classes a week, then it's like, man, we never have dinner together anymore. So that's one of the things I try and do is pick and choose my classes where they don't interfere with family life.
Joe, I'm kind of the same way there. Try to make it as less painful as possible for my wife, and by picking classes that don't not going to mess with meals or stuff like that. Another thing I would do is when my kids were younger, I would try to bring my kids, just to give my wife a little bit of a break, let her have some time to herself. And another thing too is after class, I wouldn't stick around. People would stick around and talk, and maybe for another 45 minutes, I would just jump out of there as quick as possible and get home as soon as possible. So, those things are little tricks that have worked for me. But mostly I think what's really helped me is my wife just sees how much better mood I'm in after I've trained. One thing I never really thought about is Byron talking about always staying positive. And I could see, if I came home and always talking negative, my wife would be like, man, what are you doing this stuff for? But, jiu-jitsu is something I really enjoy. She sees from the time I go to jiu-jitsu, from the time I get back, that I'm in a much better mood. And I'm telling you, there's been numerous times that I wasn't planning on going to jiu-jitsu. I came home from work and I'm in a bad mood for something at work. And my wife just looks at me and is like, hey, why don't you go to jiu-jitsu? because she knows it's going to put me in a better mood. So that's one good way. You can use this to trick your wife.
I like that though. That's a good point. And for the listeners, if you click on the link and read the article, the author sort of breaks it down into there's 4 different ways your wife can or your spouse can look at this. They can either be simply concerned for your well-being, like, oh, please don't go break your neck, or they can be somewhat indifferent, or they can be enthusiastic about it, like, yeah, I'm glad you're having a good time. And then even better than that, they can have a desire that you go. And I think that's kind of what you're shooting at. You want to make this something that your spouse views as a good thing. And like Gary said, when your wife kicks you out of the house to go do jiu-jitsu, that's a good thing. Yeah,
I've definitely won when I've heard that. But jiu-jitsu has really
also, she wins
me.
because Grumpy Gary's out of the house. Like, she kick you out to go do whatever.
Yeah, but I mean, it really tells me, and I'm not putting on this big facade to trick my wife into this. It really shows what jiu-jitsu has done for me. I know each and every one of us is unique individuals, but when I'm at jiu-jitsu, I don't think about any problems that I've had. My heart rate goes up, but when I get home, my heart rate is down. I'm resting peacefully. I'm in a great mood, and I'm just satisfied. It's jiu-jitsu has done a lot for me.
Yeah, she's happy when she can get Grumpy Gary out of the house. He comes home sleepy Gary. Usually he's just dopey
just
Gary.
Dopey Gary. It's Dopey Gary 24/7 though.
I think looking at some of the relationships I was in before I got married, most of my girlfriends supported jiu-jitsu. And I never really, I guess, dated anybody very long that didn't at least understand that it was helping me on and off the mat, like helping me as a person be happy, and it's something that I really enjoyed. But occasionally you run into somebody that doesn't want you to do it. And I think that you need to communicate how important it is and what it's doing for you that helps you. And then you need to look at it from another angle. And is it like coming from a place of jealousy? Are they not getting to do something that they want to do because you're gone all the time? Like if Tuesday night would have been dance night, and that's the only night that your spouse was able to do something fun, and you're going out Tuesday night and training, and so they're stuck at home, with the kids or, doing other chores or responsibilities. Maybe, it might just be that simple communication, like what do you want to do that is going to help you enjoy life a little bit more, and how can we both do our things that we are passionate about? And if they don't have something like that, you need to help them find something like that. It may be jiu-jitsu. It may not be jiu-jitsu. That's okay. But I think if somebody is getting upset or doesn't want you to do something that you really like to do that is healthy for you to do, there's something else that you need to try to find and help them overcome, because that's not a healthy thing. You should want people to do things that are good for them.
Yeah, I think that's a really good point. And you can tell your spouse, yeah, I'm going to jiu-jitsu tonight, and I realize it takes time away from the time we spend together, but there's a craft show or there's a new movie out that I know you wanted to see. If you're taking time away from your spouse to do jiu-jitsu, make sure that you're willing to pay an equal sacrifice to do what they enjoy doing.
Man, that's probably a really great tip right there, Joe. That is so important. It's give and take. You're going to get a little bit of time to train jiu-jitsu, and like Byron said, if there's a dance class on Tuesday night or she wants to go dancing, you do like what Joe said. You find another class, another time to train, and you give up and you go do your dancing. And it's give and take. You got to make sure the other person's happy, and you need to talk, as Byron said. Let's talk about this. Let's see what would help you out, and where is this coming from?
Yeah, relationships fail. Communication and compromise. Too much communication and too much compromise are why relationships sometimes go bad.
Yeah.
Just
okay, Dr. Byron.
So no matter what.
Too much communication. No, you got to be upfront and you got to talk about things. And I think that's a common thing in a lot of relationships is like, I want to do this, I want to do it. Sorry if it makes you upset. Like, talk about it. And then, if they also want to do something, yeah, you've got to compromise your time a little bit. And Joe, and I know I'm as well, fortunate. I could train, and if I want to train today, I have a couple options about when I'm going to train. And okay, do you want to go out tonight? Okay, well, I'm going to train in the afternoon then. And that seems to work out a lot better. And then plus, if I'm running anybody all the time, I'm going to drive them nuts. So, like Gary's wife is happy when he gets out of the house sometimes and gets out of, gets out of her hair a little bit, Time without Gary sometimes is pretty nice. Time without Byron around the house probably is a good thing.
Not so
yeah, and you know what else, Byron? If I want to master jiu-jitsu, I'm more likely to do that going to class 10 times a month for 15 years than going 20 times a month for 3 years.
Great point. That is right.
You can overdo it because I need to get good. I need to get good. But if you only stick with it for a short period of time, then you're not going to make it.
Yeah, and
sorry guys, I got distracted. I'm looking on Facebook, and my coach is dropping into a half pipe that he just built in his backyard.
But the other thing I think about too is, an advantage for the significant other. It's always going to be easy to buy presents. I always hear, man, what can I get, so-and-so for his birthday or for Christmas? Man, just get us a new gi, a new pair of gi shorts, grappling shorts. Get us a new DVD. It's easy to shop for the jiu-jitsu aficionado.
That's true. I feel like I'm a fortunate guy. I'm the only guy I know. Literally half the jiu-jitsu gear I have, my wife surprised me with.
Yeah,
she's bought me 2 or 3 gis and a couple of pair of fight shorts. So
yeah.
So Lisa Thomas, if you listen to this, I love you, babe.
That is awesome. And like you said, isn't that just such a great gift? It's like, man, this is perfect. And so we're easy to shop for.
We definitely didn't cover the article in entirety. We talked. It was good. We talked about our own situations and how we've learned about jiu-jitsu. But yeah, long term, keeping your spouse happy with you going jiu-jitsu is a good play. And yeah, you'll have, if I come home 40 times, I'm loving jiu-jitsu, I tell it what happened, it was great. And one time, I come home and it was hard, and I explain that, who's going to pick me up and say, hey, you need to keep going. This is important to you. You're not, most of the time you're really happy to do this. And so they might even be the person that helps motivate you to just stay on the mats if that time comes.
And one last thing is, I think a lot of significant others probably get more hugs because we're looking at new ways to do a takedown. We're getting underhooks. We're pushing off to the side. We're tapping the hips. We're, so I use my wife as a grappling dummy, which, leads to more hugs.
She's always asking me, like, you got to show me escape moves because I'm wanting to get away from this Gary guy. Yeah. You've seen the, I don't know who made the meme, but like the husband and wife are in bed reading books, a little cartoon, and he's learning 101 submissions and she's reading the book 101 escapes.
I haven't seen that one, but that's awesome.
I guess it'd be cool to hear about you guys and how you're doing. How much it means that you have support from your spouse and whatever. That'd be kind of a cool thing to post on this article. You can post it on our Facebook page, whatever, and just to see how the community is handling that. And definitely could be a positive, could be a neutral, or could be a negative, but it's up to you guys how you handle that.
Yep. Hey, speaking of positives, June 22nd, June 23rd, June 24th, the first BJJ Brick event, as like Byron likes to call it, the Brickapalooza. We've got an awesome event scheduled. June 22nd is open mat. June 23rd is meat and potatoes day. We have 2 former guests going to do seminars. Tim Sled, Rolly Delgado, 2 of the best in the world. They're going to be here dropping knowledge with us. June 24th, another kind of open mat seminar with the BJJ Brick guys. So we're going to be showing a little bit and just having fun. There's going to be off the mat stuff going on too. Check it out. Sign up online. We want as many people there as possible. It is going to be a blast.
Yeah, I'm really looking forward to this. Rolly Delgado and Tim Sled are in my mind, two of the smartest guys in jiu-jitsu. I love the way they think about it, and I'm really looking forward to this. Looking forward to feeling Gary's pressure and his leg lock game, and we'll just see what happens.
But never mind.
No, Gary, I tell you, like Gary won't attack your legs.
Guys if you make it sound like I'm some monster. I'm terrible.
I'm bringing my crutches. That's all I'm saying.
There you go. At least it'll help you out on the airplane. You can maybe get a better seat.
You get the aisle seat, first class.
But this will be.
I am flying United, so we might want to.
It'll be a great weekend. I'm looking at different things to show. I'm asking some of my teammates, what have I shown or taught you that's had a big impact on your game? Looking at things like side control escapes and really dealing with somebody who's applying a lot of pressure, how to get out of that. I'm also thinking about showing methods of applying pressure and some concepts I think will really help people's game. Somebody told me, hey, it would be cool if you showed us some of your drilling techniques, maybe some of the 6 games for BJJ. Kind of, we got to play those and got to work on those during the thing that might be kind of neat. I do a arm triangle setup that's a bit different, and finish that is fairly different, that it is very clean and no neck cranking involved. So anyway, there's a few things that I'm kind of passing around and seeing what people are interested in, shutting down somebody's half guard and really dealing with that in an effective way. There's a few that have popped up, and I'm trying to figure out the best things to work on, and I got a few things that hopefully Gary wouldn't mind showing, but I think that's gonna be that 24th of the Sunday. But I'm really excited about seeing Rolly Delgado and Tim Sled on the mat together, showing jiu-jitsu and training with everybody. It's gonna be a blast.
Yeah, this is awesome. And this is happening in part because we have Patreon supporters. And we just like to thank everybody that is a Patreon supporter. If you're not and you'd like to support the show, Byron has a YouTube video that talks a little bit about it. You can go on there and you can support us. You can pay $1 an episode if that's what you choose. You can limit it to X amount of episodes a month, and it helps the show keep going, and it helps put on events like this. And if you are a Patreon supporter, you'll get free gi patch, sticker. You'll become a member of the private Facebook page and have an opportunity to weigh in on questions that we'll ask potential guests. So, go ahead and check that out, and we appreciate all the supporters we have.
Yeah. Rewind in real quick because I saw a note on there. If you're thinking about the BJJ Brick event, there's a link in the show notes now. We've got that up, and you can go and sign up for it. There's 60 spots available, and I think one or both of the times when Rolly Delgado came, we had 60 people show up. I mean, very likely this sells out because this is Rolly, it's Tim, it's us. It's like it's a big event, but this would be something to not wait on. If your schedule looks good and you look like you want to do this, check out the link, take you to the right spots, and then we'll hopefully see you there if this is something you want to do. But yeah, Patreon's a big deal. It's helped us grow the show for sure.
And you know what else has helped us grow this show? Is each and every one of you guys telling all your family, friends, jiu-jitsu aficionados about us, and we really appreciate that. So, share it on your Facebook page. Tell people to like the BJJ Brick Facebook site there, and let everybody know about us. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, and make your spouse listen. I mean, just this one thing: if they're not on board, have them listen to the show. Then they really won't be on board with the jiu-jitsu.
Well, they'll actually like Joe and Byron, but I've been known to attract flies.
Well, I can't think of a better way to start a romantic getaway than getting in the car and putting on the BJJ.
We started with righty tighty, lefty loosey, and went from there.
And this is how we end.
No, something just popped into my head. About having the spouses and thinking about that. Recently, and I guess this is kind of off the mat thing, but I'll forget it within a few minutes if I don't mention it. But my wife likes to go camping, and like she's wanting to go. The weather's getting nice, and we're not going. Like every time there's a day that or a night that we're both free and free the next morning, something's happening that evening and it's like blocking it. And she's frustrated, and it's not going to happen for a while. And if you wait too long in Kansas, it gets too hot to sleep outside and put a tent up and go camping somewhere. I just said, and I'm glad I said it. I said, what do you like most about camping? And she said, getting outside for extended period of time, getting away from the city, and being with you, and just enjoying outside time. And so now, that's not undoable with what our schedules are. We're going to go just do a day hike, and we'll come back and we'll be at the house in the evening. But she didn't say sleeping in a tent on an uncomfortable air mattress or whatever. That's what that wasn't the main thing. So just if your spouse, to go back to the whole article thing, because I just thought, if your spouse has a problem with your jiu-jitsu, what about the jiu-jitsu do you not like? And see what that gets, because I had no idea that the actual camping part of it wasn't the main enjoyment. It was the getting out and being away from everything and being in the wilderness. That was the main enjoyment, and we could still do that. What about me going to jiu-jitsu twice a week, 3 times a week, 4 times a week? Do you not like? And then work from that point. I don't know why I'm thinking about this so late after the article, but that just popped into my head, and I felt like that was a lucky thing I kind of stumbled upon and asked her about it, and we found a solution to a problem that we had given ourselves. So that wraps up the article a little bit. No, I'm just kidding. But guys, we have a little bit of a debt here because we've set the expectations of a audiobook that Gary and Joe are creating, and time to pay off that debt and make it all right. Gary, Joe, you guys are producing, writing, and designing an audiobook. It was going to be a short video, then it turned into a long video, then it was a short documentary, and it looks like it's mostly just going to be a book now. I don't know for sure, but it's called Topsy-Turvy World, where you turn things upside down. And it's about jiu-jitsu. I don't know if it's a sweep-based book or what's happening there, but clearly this book, and the problem with the video and the documentary is you wanted a book and you wanted to print the label on the book upside down from the actual written text. So you open the book and then you're like, oh, it's all upside down. So you flip it upside down, and then everybody who thinks you're reading, they think you're illiterate because you're clearly looking at a book that's upside down. That's part of it. But guys, what's happening with this book?
Well, Byron, it's not just a book. It's a lifestyle. What we want to do is we want to do everything upside down. I mean, from walking on our hands to wearing our pants and shirts upside down. We have started a whole revolution. We are, trying to take it to the next level. But, one thing we've noticed, like you said, that book, we had the title upside down, and the first 2 pages are the right side up, and the next 2 pages are upside down. That way you have to turn it all the time. And, we're doing that for jiu-jitsu because it's going to make your wrist stronger because you're always turning the book, back and forth. And we've even weighted the book, just to make your grip strength that much better. But, we're here. It's not just to make us better at jiu-jitsu, but we want to be better at jiu-jitsu, but it's going to be a whole lifestyle change.
Yeah, we're not just talking upside down. We're talking upside down, inside out, backwards. I personally have started driving on the left-hand side of the road. So if you want to develop your defensive driving skills, I would strongly advise driving against traffic.
Yeah, and I mean, that has worked wonders for Joe. I mean, I've seen him in MMA class. Nobody can hit him. He can dodge everything. And I mean, just from that, look what it's done. It's just been tremendous.
He's had to buy several new vehicles, and his insurance is through the roof now, though.
Right. But, and, when we're in class, we always, do our run laps and shuffle and cherry pickers, and everybody's always going clockwise. I go counterclockwise, and sometimes I just lay some guys out.
Yeah. And I mean, it's done wonders. Like it's helped the teammates too, because they have to dodge Joe, and a couple of those guys have got concussions because they haven't got out of the way. So, I mean, it's working great. Joe now walks everywhere on his hands. He does not use his feet at all. You ought to see the size of his arms. I mean, the guy's got tremendous strength now. When he grabs your gi, you're not getting away. And plus, his wrist strength from turning the book upside down, and topsy-turvy, inside out.
Gary, the day I can walk on my hands. Oh my.
But yeah, so definitely, everybody check it out. What I would first recommend is starting off slowly. Don't walk on your hands, or don't drive on the other side of the road, because right off the bat it could, not be to your advantage. But do something easy, like wear your pants upside down. Try that today. Byron, as soon as we get off this show, turn your pants upside down and try that.
Not backwards, but literally upside down, to where the
upside down,
the zipper and the button are on the ground.
Yeah, the legs.
Everyone's going to be looking at the backside, or the front. Man.
Well, that's an advanced technique. For the beginners, just try putting your shirt on your bottoms. You put your feet through the sleeves and you pull it up, and you'll have some extra material there, but just tie a belt around it and you'll be fine.
Perfect. Yeah, just like old 80s old 80s dress style there with the belt.
And you can still you don't have to take it off to go pee.
Yep. But definitely check it out. We've got it coming up. It's going to come out on Yom Kippur, so make sure you check it out and buy one for you, buy one for your friends, and remember, it's a lifestyle.
All right, there we go. We've got the book and the release date. You can't drive on the wrong side of the road unless you have the book. It's very dangerous. The book definitely helps it out. So when the book comes out, that's when it's appropriate. And the book's never coming out. Check us out on social media. Facebook is our big one. You'll catch us all on there, commenting and talk with you guys. Joe's doing a great job as far as he's always bringing up new ideas and new concepts and posting cool stuff. And I know my phone dings a lot with Facebook and letting us know what's happening on there. YouTube is another big one. Most of the podcast episodes are up on YouTube. If you're unable to download a podcast, but you can go to YouTube, you can go check it out there. Not many people do that because you don't need to actually watch a podcast. So having the YouTube app or open on your computer is kind of a bit unnecessary. But that's where they're there. It's kind of a backup for us, just to store them off site. Yeah. But just the other day, someone was saying, "So you have a podcast?" I said, "Yeah, we have a podcast. It's about Jiu-Jitsu." Well, how do I listen to that? I go, "What kind of phone do you have?" And he said, "Android." Well, do you listen to the podcast already? Because I have Android and I have a podcast app that I use. And he said, no, he doesn't even have an app. He's like, I've never listened to a podcast. I said, well, go to the App Store and type in BJJ Brick and download our app. It's free, and it'll have all the episodes there you can download and listen to with the app. It's an easy player. So if you're not a podcast listener, well, I don't know how you got this far. If your friend is not a podcast listener, the app is a great option. If you want everything there convenient in an own dedicated app, check it out. It's pretty easy, and hopefully it'll help you share not just the podcast, but podcast in general to people. I think that it's growing, but people as old as Gary still don't understand podcasts.
Yeah, what's a podcast? If you're not a podcast listener, you're probably not listening to this podcast.
Yeah. True words are never been spoken.
But literally, there are a dozen or more quality jiu-jitsu podcasts out there. So definitely get the BJJ Brick every week, but look into some of the other podcasts too. And if you got a little commute to and from work, or if you're out doing an hour's worth of yard work every afternoon in your garden, man, this is a good way to get tuned into the jiu-jitsu scene. Yeah,
and hopefully I hope keep you motivated and maybe you learn a few things. It's great to get new people listening to the podcast world. I think about the same thing as jiu-jitsu as far as like some gyms are upset about another gym opening or whatever. Think of it as they're getting new students. They're not taking your students. We want more listeners to podcasts. I'm not worried about any of our podcast listeners going anywhere. I think if you like us, you'll be around. And we're happy to have you here. The bigger the pie, the more people listen to podcasts, the better for everybody. So glad you guys are listening. We'll catch you guys next week. Stay sweaty, my friends.
And don't forget to shower.
Train hard, train smart, get better. We'll see you on the mats, guys.
Stay loose, my friends.
And download the app.
Thank you for listening. I hope you find the time today to roll. After all, the best way to get better at Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is to do Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu.
My name is G, and I like to rap. I got a microphone and a baseball cap. I live right down by the mill.
Thanks so much for checking out this episode. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. Check us out next week. And don't forget to check out the archives at bjjbrick.com or on this YouTube channel.